Yo, what's up, guys? It's Evil. Today we're going to cover a pretty serious case. I think it's probably the most serious case that is in front of the American people at the moment, with Trump's first 100 days. And we're going to be talking about Abrego Garcia. Most of you are probably aware of this case, but if you're not, I'm going to give you a rundown. Okay? Trump has enacted the Alien Enemies Act, which means that he can arrest and deport people without any due process. The Alien Enemies Act is only supposed to be used during wartime, so he has declared that we are in some kind of war with Venezuela, specifically Tren de Aragua. Somehow MS-13 is also part of that war, but it hasn't been officially declared, but it's just assumed because Trump is so bad at paperwork. But they did their first round of roundups. They got something like 200 something people, maybe like 250, maybe a bit less. I'm not sure on the exact number. And they didn't give them a chance to fight their extradition in court. This is pretty big. That's one of the amendments, I believe. It's you have a right to a trial in every legal proceeding. So the fact that the president can suspend that right for any reason is kind of shocking. But apparently he can, because Congress gave him that right in the first decade of America existing, back when there was fear of a war with France. But that's a different issue. So he's using this power under what seems to be kind of a little bit trumped up, if I could say, reasons to deport people back to South America. Where is he deporting them to? He's deporting them to CCOT, I believe it's called. It's like a terrorism detainment center that's known for human rights abuses and shit like that. Like killing people. I think there's like a 10% death rate the first year you're there or whatever. We're sending them to that without a chance to fight their sentencing, really, in court. Now, the funny thing about this Alien Enemies Act is that it's the same act that they used to justify Japanese internment in World War II. So if you know anyone who's Japanese American who's been here for a long time, it's quite likely they probably had a parent or parents who went through some form of legal discrimination during World War II. It's kind of a black mark on the nation's history. And Trump's using that to do this to people from South America, which is messed up. Now, here's where things get really weird, because that on its own should be pretty scary to people, that they can just take away your right to a trial and send you off to another country's prison system, never to be heard from again. That should be scary, because what if they get it wrong? Well, the Trump administration admitted that they made a clerical error deporting someone who had previously had a court order saying that they cannot be removed. They were here on refugee status, and they were part of this group that got deported to El Salvador. So this guy had filed for habeas corpus, which means the right to a trial and shit like that. Or he had people on his behalf do that while he was in detention, because he wasn't offered the right to go to trial or any of that. And the judge said, Trump administration, you cannot send these people to El Salvador. So Trump responds with a tweet saying, too late, smiley face, and sends the planes anyways. And keep in mind, Trump says, oh, they're already in the air. I think one of them was in the air and passing over the Gulf of Mexico. It could easily have turned around. And the other one, I don't think had even taken off yet when that order went out. It took off like an hour later or something like that. Plenty of time for the lawyer to make the phone call, say there's a court order, do not take off. And the judge also said you have to turn the planes around and bring those people back and give them their right to a trial. Trump said, no, we're ignoring that. Forget that. Planes got to El Salvador, unloaded the people into this terrorist confinement center, which, keep in mind, is a no idleness policy, which, when translated into realistic English, means forced labor. So he sent these people to the forced labor camp, came back, said, oh, too late. This guy wasn't supposed to be sent. So his case got all the way to the Supreme Court, because the judge in his case had said, sorry, I'm checking the size. The judge in that case had said you got to get this guy back. You need to facilitate and effectuate his return, and he gave him a certain date. And the Trump administration appealed that, went to the Supreme Court. This is what the Supreme Court said. By the way, supremecourt.gov, that's where you can find all of the opinions from the Supreme Court. Don't just rely on someone to tell you. Go there, find it. Link to this will be in the description. Anyways, Kristi Noem, Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, et al., Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia. Those are two people against each other. Department of Homeland Security and Kilmar, Armando, Abrego, Garcia. So it says, on March 15th, 2025, the United States removed Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia from the United States to El Salvador, where he is currently detained in the Center for Terrorism Confinement, CCOT. The United States acknowledges that Abrego Garcia was subject to a withholding order forbidding his removal to El Salvador, and that the removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal. I'm going to translate that for you guys. That means that he was a legal citizen, or not legal citizen, he was a legal resident of America. He was here legally, okay? There was a court order saying he is here legally. That's beyond I don't know why the Trump administration is saying he was an illegal immigrant. He came here, got asylum, boom. All right. The United States represents that the removal to El Salvador was the result of an administrative error. The United States alleges, however, that Abrego Garcia has been found to be a member of the gang MS-13, a designated foreign terrorist organization, and that his return to the United States would pose a threat to the public. Now, here is Abrego Garcia responds that he's not a member of MS-13, that he has lived safely in the United States with his family for a decade and has never been charged with a crime. Okay, so those are the two sides. Sorry. So the United States alleges that he's part of MS-13. He hasn't been found guilty in a trial. There hasn't been an official indictment against him for crimes that he committed for MS-13. Their evidence is that he had a tattoo, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, which might be affiliated with MS-13, but it's also a pretty famous Hindu saying, or I think it's Buddhist, one of the two. It's a Far Eastern metaphor, whatever you want to call it. It's a common saying over there. I've seen it literally in anime cartoons and shit like that. It's a very common saying outside of America. So you can't really use that as evidence that he's part of a gang. I'm sure there's tons of people not in MS-13 who have some reference to hear no evil, see no evil, say no evil, or speak no evil, sorry. So that really, and he's not here to counteract it, so we just have the government saying he's part of MS-13, and that in and of itself is a problem. It goes on to say, on Friday, April 4th, the United States District Court of the District of Maryland entered an order directing the government to facilitate and effectuate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States by no later than 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 7th. On the morning of April 7th, the United States filed this application to vacate the district court's order. The Chief Justice entered an administrative stay and subsequently referred the application to the court. The application is granted in part and denied in part, subject to the direction of this order. So they approved some of it, and they have something to say about the other part of it. So due to the administrative stay issued by the Chief Justice, the deadline imposed by the district court has now passed. To that extent, the government's emergency application is effectively granted in part, and the deadline of the challenged order is no longer effective. So the government wins on that, just because the deadline passed. They can't tell them he has to be back at a certain day, because that day is already gone. It's too late. That's all they're saying there. The rest of the district court order remains in effect, but requires clarification on remand. So they're not counteracting the rest of the order beyond the date. They're just saying the date has passed, the specific date is no longer relevant. But the rest of it is good. And that order was that they need to bring him, Abrego Garcia, back, or do everything they can to get him back. So the rest of the district court's order remains in effect, but requires clarification on remand. The order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. So they're telling him that Abrego Garcia needs to be released from El Salvador. The government needs to do everything possible to do that. And yeah, they're not saying that here, let's keep reading. The intended scope of the term effectuate in the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. So they're saying he has to facilitate, which means they have to make it easy. They have to do everything in their possible to make it easier for this guy to come back. And effectuate, they have to limit it just because the district court can't tell the government how to do foreign policy. Okay? The district court should clarify its directive with due regard to the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. That's what I just said. For its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. The order heretofore entered by the Chief Justice is vacated. So they're basically saying the government has to do what it can to get this guy back, everything possible. And they have to keep the court, the lower court, the district court, informed of what they're doing. Now, the rest of this is the end of page 2. This on down is just Justice Sotomayor and Justice Kagan and Justice Jackson. And it's not like we disagree. It's like we agree, but we agree on top of that. So what we just covered was agreed to 9-0. Every single Supreme Court justice agreed to this. So this is the part that really matters. The other just has 3 people voting for it. It's not a majority. That doesn't mean all that much right now. So we're not going to cover it. Anyways, this has been a huge thing. Trump has really disregarded people's amendment right to a fair trial. And in doing so, he fucked up. The chance for this guy to be like, hey, I wasn't supposed to go, was taken away from him. Which should scare everybody. If you're scared about Democrats coming to take your guns, you should realize that the Democrats, if they get a president in power again, could just declare that we're at war with someone, maybe, I don't know, school shooters, right? And just deport motherfuckers who have guns off to Pakistan or Palestine or wherever the hell is getting bombed at the time and wipe their hands of it. If Donald Trump can do this, the next Democrat can also do this, which is why it's important that we say, no, you can't do this today. Whether you think Donald Trump's going to go for a 3rd term or not, this is important to fight against. Now, the crazy thing, all that was crazy. The even crazier thing is that Donald Trump had a second wave planned, and that is right here. The Supreme Court didn't even wait for it to get to them. Okay, they issued this order out of the blue before the proper channel had gone through, because they knew Trump was going to try to smuggle these people out of the country, okay, into El Salvador before any court could tell him no. And so they said, hey, there is before the court an application on behalf of a putative class of detainees. That's referring to the group of people that Trump was trying to deport without giving them the right to a trial, seeking an injunction against the removal under the Alien Enemies Act. So they're saying hey, don't let them deport us under the Alien Enemies Act, which I covered earlier. The matter is currently pending before the 5th Circuit. Upon action by the 5th Circuit, the Solicitor General is invited to file a response to the application before this court as soon as possible. So it seems to me that they're fast-tracking this case to the Supreme Court. The government is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. Which means they're saying, you can't fucking send anyone anywhere until we tell you to. Which is cool. The Supreme Court seems to finally be checking Donald Trump on something. Jesus Christ, thank God, finally. The kind of scary thing is that this one's only 7-2. Justice Thomas and Justice Alito, who are the 2 guys with all the bribery shit going on, they're the ones getting free flights and their grandma's fucking house is paid for by corporations and shit like that. They dissented, which I don't want to throw accusations around without proof, but it looks fucking not great to me that you have the 2 shadiest dudes dissenting and everyone else is in agreement that you can't do this. So yeah, that's just my opinion on this. I wanted to wait for more information, but it seems like the Supreme Court put a stop to it on Saturday. And now we're waiting for the Supreme Court to make its decision. But if you feel invigorated by this is something I'm going to start doing every video. recommend that you go to congress.gov. You can type in your address. It's going to tell you who your senators are and who your local representative is, or who your House representative is for your district. And you're going to be able to contact them through there. And you can tell them how you feel. So I'm going to encourage you to do that. I'll put a link to this website also down in the description. And yeah, good luck to y'all. Hope maybe you can make some change, maybe not. I don't know. Tell me how you feel in the comments. Like, subscribe, do all that. Later.